So what heats your pan better, gas or induction? Hi, I'm Jed, this is Cook Culture. So today I'm going to test cast iron and carbon steel on induction and gas. I'm specifically sticking to cast and carbon because it starts getting a little bit too broad and detailed if we start adding in different materials. So I believe cast iron and carbon steel works the best for pretty much all fry pan style cooking. Arguably you can look at a really high quality stainless steel that is pretty equal, but generally for affordability and performance, cast iron carbon steel is awesome, right? It's hard to argue. So that's why I want to just kind of narrow it down and look at these two. So I'm just going to randomly pick different brands using carbon and cast of a high end, more expensive cast and a lower quality or a lower price point cast. Hard to call it lower quality, it's just different. And we'll see between using my high-end induction Genair cooktop and what kind of results we get from speed of heating and then what the pan temperature is. Today I'm going to be using a thermal gun that I don't usually ever use because I like people just to go by feel, but it's hard to give you an exact if we're not using something like that. And then we're going to go to our Victoria, BC location and use our gas cooktop there. And we're going to do the same 3 pans. I'm going to measure speed and penetration and see what the results are. We're not going to do any cooking because there's just too many variables in that. Really, this is about the performance of getting to temperature and how varied the temperature is on the cooking surface once it's at temperature. So here we go. Okay, so we've got 3 pans. We've got a 12.5-inch Lodge Chef Series cast iron pan. We've got a number 10 field skillet, and we have a 10-inch Dubois Mineral B fry pan. So all of these induction burners all work the same, but what I'm going to do is turn the power on to the induction cooktop. I'm going to put everything here at a 6 and get the power on, and we'll go 6, 6. So we've got those guys all now on a 6. I've got myself an Escali thermal gun that I'm going to start measuring. So everything, the counter is at 73 degrees Fahrenheit when I just pointed at the stainless steel countertop. And I start going, we're at 138 right away, 131, 101 for the Dubois. So that was for the Lodge. We're now at 148 for the field, 138, and 104 for the Dubois, which is interesting. There very well could be variances within each induction coil under the cooktop. It's interesting that this one here in the Dubois is actually the lowest right now, but they're all at a 6. And I will have started the timer in this video when I go and edit it, so we'll see what kind of time we have. I'm gonna go for about 1.5 minutes of preheat and see where we get to. In induction is kind of the beginning of what you wanna do for a preheat. I'm a big fan of cast iron and carbon steel for preheating at a medium temperature for 3 to 4 to 5 minutes before you start using it to fully penetrate the pan. And that would be the rule of thumb for all cooktops. If it's an electric coil, or if it's halogen, if it's gas, if it's induction, once it gets up to the temperature, it's gonna get up there and then just penetrate. It's not gonna continue rising. It's not like a cheap aluminum pan that just keeps conducting and conducting and conducting and just can get out of hand and it's really hard to use if you leave it for too long. A really high quality carbon steel or cast iron pan will just sit at temp and just be there, and which is great. So you don't have to mess around with it once it's fully penetrated. So I've probably yabbered on enough. I'm going to now do some measuring here. Okay, so we're at 241 in the middle of the pan of the Lodge, 238 in the middle of the pan on the field, and 147 which is really interesting. Let me try to see if I can measure it somewhere else. Yeah, 156. So I'm getting funny results from the debuyer. Not totally sure why. So now what I'm going to do is take a look at the outside of the pan. So in the lodge, we're at 270 degrees Fahrenheit in the center. On the edge, we're at 135, 172 on the opposite edge. On the end by the handle helper, 139, and on the far edge, 191 by the handle. So quite a bit of variable temperatures all around the outside of this pan still. For the lodge, this is the field, 271 in the center. The far left-hand side, 276. The other side, 112. I'm going to try to center that pan a little bit more on the induction. The far end by the handle helper is 204, and by the handle, it's 203. So again, a lot of variable temperatures, a lot of variation in the temperatures there on the surface of the pan. We'll go to the Dubois Mineral B. We're 166 in the center, 159 in the edge, 193 on the other edge, 194 by the handle, and the other side is 204. Okay, so we got some really funky things going on with the debuyer on that burner. I'm going to, just for the fun of it right now, switch this guy and this guy over and see what can happen. Also, the 12.5 inch lodge and the number 10 field are big. The 10 inch in the debuyer is small. All of the pan fits on the element. That definitely is going to have a change in variation. But the way in which that was happening on that element for the debuyer, that was funky. Partly why I don't love using guns, it throws you all over the place. If I was heating this pan and using it, I've never felt variation in the pan. When I've cooked in it, this pan many times on that burner, I have even results. So just using it naturally without having to use technical tools, it just works for me. But we're trying to understand the difference here between using induction and gas. So let's do this one last time here. These guys are all going to be now at a preheated temperature. I would start cooking with these guys now. They're all there. So we'll go backwards here. So we're starting in the same order we always have. So we've got, okay, so the lodge is 375 degrees in the center. 182 on the left-hand side, 244 on the right-hand side. This has given us the same type of results that we're getting here with the variability on each end. 214 by the handle and 244 on the handle helper. So it's different than the debuyer. 356 in the center. It's hot on one side of the burner. It sits hotter, definitely. It's sitting on my right-hand side. That burner is a little bit funky. It shows the same results as here, except the center is hotter. Okay, so for the field, we've got 378 in the middle. The left-hand side is 277. 232 on the other end by the handle is 192. And the far end by the handle helper is 312. So some solid variability. There's some, it really cools off. You come towards the handle. It's probably a little bit off of the burner, a little bit, or off the, excuse me, the induction plate. But again, when I use these on this hob, I don't have any issue. So let's go to the final one here on the Dubois in the center. 237 in the center, 195 on the left edge, 266 on the right-hand side, 231 by the handle, and 243 on the far end. So it seems that the pan is the hottest on the right-hand side, coolest in the middle, and coolest on the, sorry, not coolest in the middle, but cooler on the middle, and coolest on the far left-hand side. Same types of results that we had from the field, but like I said, I've never really felt that difference. So the temperature variation is similar. This does kind of lean towards something I've always felt about cast iron and carbon steel, is that you get hot spots, I feel, in your pans, because you get this area that always seems to carbonize your food way more than others. You're always scrubbing one area on the pan more than others. And you can even see this on this pan. There's more carbon buildup on the right-hand side of this pan than on the left-hand side, and that is where this pan on both of the induction burners is heating up more. It's hotter in that spot. Yeah, so it's 279 in that carbonated area, 239 in the middle, and then 209 on the other side. This pan, maybe has a tiny bit of rock, but really nothing major. So that's really fascinating that it's doing that. We spin that guy around, leave it for a sec, and see if changing the other side of that is but you're never gonna cook with your handle that side. You're always gonna be cooking where your handle is the most comfortable. And so if there is really heat coming from one side of that induction plate to the other, then you're not going to control that very much just by changing your handle. But it's interesting just to know if that's happening. So center of this pan is 236. My right hand side, 213. Far left hand side, 288. So this pan has stayed doing exactly the same thing. The carbonated area, the hot spot on this pan, is in the same place even when I do a 180-degree turn on here. So it's not telling me that that part of the induction is coming through more density, more hot, however we want to say it. The energy is coming through in that spot. Fascinatingly, it's coming through in the space on the pan. The pan is more conductive in that spot comparatively to the other spot. So where it's darker around here, that's absorbing more energy. This side isn't. That's fascinating. I'm gonna dig more into that in a different video. But right now, we're gonna take these 3 pans to our Victoria kitchen and we're gonna do the same test and see what we get. Okay, so we're in the Victoria kitchen. We've got an 8-burner Blue Star gas range here. It's been here for nearly 12 years when we first started our first teaching kitchen, and that's what we're in here in Victoria, BC. I've got the 3 pans. I did a little bit of research. I hadn't researched this stove for years since I probably bought it, of which burners are actually the same amount of BTUs. So I can do all 3 pans at the same time. So I'm gonna lay these guys out onto the 3 burners that are the same temperature. I'm gonna get them, so a 6 is what we had in Vancouver using induction. And I'm gonna set these at just over half. So that's around the same. So they're a little bit harder to control precisely. That's another advantage of induction, is that all 3 of those I could do perfectly at exactly the same. There were 6 on each. These ones I'm trying to set the dials to the same place. So also what I was saying earlier, really fascinated again by the Dubai pan. The results we got out of that pan was really, really neat. I'm excited to see if heating these guys up is gonna be the same sort of thing as we did earlier, about 1.5 minutes to start. As I said also earlier, I would give these guys 3, 5, 6 minutes as a full preheat before I started using them and just test them. I find one of the best tests when you're using something like gas, it is a little hard to understand how it regulates. Some burners, of course, are hotter than others. Just put a little bit of water. I find if it has too much of a fast, immediate sizzle and disappears, it's too hot. If it goes on and balls up and just kind of rolls around a little bit, it's in a great spot. And that works well when you really don't know exactly what temperature you're at. So using the temperature gun again here, we've got it, 75 degrees is the counter temperature, and We started before with the lodge, going to the field and finishing with the Dubois. So this has gotten hot really fast. So that's at 383 degrees already. That's at 244. That's at 249. So I probably have the heat maybe a little too hot. I'm just gonna come down just a tiny bit. The Blue Star is a commercial style residential range, so it goes really hot. This burner here on the far left-hand side is a 22,000 BTU burner. It is crazy how much temperature comes out of that thing. And you know, I've got some smoking on the pan, so definitely I am hotter, running hotter than what I was doing earlier. We didn't have smoke coming off the pan when we were at a 6. That was a really perfect cooking temperature. And right now I can even tell this pan is going too hot. So I've backed those guys off. And we will measure this again. Yeah, we're at 508 degrees. So we are 318 and 330. Okay, so this guy here, this one burner, it's supposed to be the same temperature, but it's burning hotter. So I'm gonna back it off a little bit. So really hard again here to get this equal amount. What we wanna understand though is how do we have temperature throughout the 3 pans. So this is overly hot now, but where are we at? We're at, yeah, so temperature's coming down on the lodge pan. We're at 469 in the middle. We're at the end by the handle helper. We're at 402 by the handle. Whoa. Yeah, okay. By the handle, we're at 250. So half the temperature from, and it is sitting kind of funny off there. I'll put it more centered. The handle of the field pan was kind of in the way and pushing the lodge pan back a little bit. So now I've kind of centered it up, and so our next trial maybe will give us a little more of an even temperature. So we're 450 on the far left-hand side. 289. So we've got some variation going on all over the place on that lodge pan. So we'll come back to it and see what we have. So on the field pan, the center, we've got 397. On the handle, 291. On the far end of the handle, 356. On the left-hand side, 408 and 276. That's wild. That's way all over the place. I'm gonna bring the heat down just a little bit more on these guys. So the Dubois, that was the one that we had the biggest variance on the induction top. What's gonna happen? 344 in the center, 319 at the handle, 302 on the left-hand side, 432 on the carbonated side. So that was the side we talked about this morning or earlier. I was there in the morning. And then at the far end, 396. So just to go over that again, from the left-hand side, so from this side of the pan to that side of the pan, 260 to 459 is the difference between the 2 sides of these guys. So again, I'm going to move that pan. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take that guy off the heat for a sec, let it cool. We are going to re-measure these guys. So going back to the lodge pan, still burning too hot on this guy. We're at 579 for the center, 478 for the left, 384 for the right, 497, and 333. So it's more penetrated more evenly. It started to mellow out a little bit. It was all over the place. I also centered the pan on the element. Going to the field pan, 455 in the middle, 314 at the handle, 443 at the handle helper on the left-hand side, 481, and 344. So, you know, not that far away, but it's still, you know, there's variance. There's actually more variance than I expected, which is really interesting. So we'll get this heat back on, you know, and looking at the element below, we've got the gas going on below. all the gas is even. It doesn't look like there's anything that's burning hotter in one spot than the other. So we're gonna turn the pan over there and turn it backwards, just like we did earlier, to see if for whatever reason there's more gas coming on one side. I have a feeling that this pan, for whatever reason, and I really will spend some time to figure that out, it has more heat on one side. So let's see. So 329 in the middle, 290 on what was the right-hand side with my left-hand side now, 292, so 100-degree temperature in Fahrenheit difference between the two sides of the pan, 257 for the handle side, and for the head of it, 404. So definitely, it seems to me that this pan, that part of the pan heats up for whatever reason in this pan. It's happening here in the gas too. So I'm going to turn these guys right off. The point here is that the pan still has major variances from one point of the pan to the other. It's not that gas is any better than induction for, you know, bringing the flames up and around the outside of the pan to get it hotter. The center of the pans are getting hotter just like the induction, and there's variances around the surface just like in the induction, seemingly because of the pan and less because of the cooking surface. Kind of two things going on here. Weakness in the pans, which is something for me to explore even further, which I find really fascinating. That's kind of come out of this experiment. But at the end of the day, the point that I wanted to try to find here, or the understanding, was that induction and the gas really worked quite similarly. I had a hunch that we were going to get more evenly consistent heating on the further outside of the pans, but the coolness was there. As the gas comes out the side, it's not bringing us nearly as much heat, which I found was interesting. So, you know, before I totally finish up this video, I'm going to look back at some of the numbers that I've kind of been spouting out as we go, and look back at the induction to the gas and just kind of see what that difference is. Was it nearly the same, or was the gas actually more efficient, or maybe the induction was? And then we'll have the final conclusion when I can give you an absolute data points on which one was kind of, I guess, the winner. So that's coming up next. Okay, hey, I'm at my home here. I was in my home office plugging over all the numbers, and the way in which I've done this is that we had the two different kitchens, 3 pans, so kind of 2 different tests. We tested the center around the pan for temperature, had the variance. So what I ended up doing was that ignored the center and went for the outside of the pans, because really what we're trying to understand is there equal heat? Does it distribute the heat across the pans better with gas or with induction? What is a better heat source for getting your pan to be more consistently heated over time? That's the kind of question that is the question that we're looking to answer. And so in the induction, the way in which it measured was we had the Lodge pan, we had the Field pan, and we had the Debye pan. And we had the left to right, and we had the top to bottom, or handle to the edge. And the way in which I calculated that is that I did the percentage of the high side to the low side. What's the variance from one side to the other? So, for example, the Lodge pan was 244 on the left-hand side and 182 on the right-hand side at temperature. That's a difference of 25% is how I went about that. So from the top to bottom was the handle with 214, the top with 244. That's a difference of 13%. And so to kind of try to simplify this, I don't know if there's a right way to go about it or not, but it makes sense in my mind, is that I added those up and then divided them by 2. So I had an average on that pan on induction for Lodge of 19% of variance combined. So if that isn't good logic, let me know. Put a comment below. I'd love to know a better way to do this, but I'm trying to make the most amount of sense to equally gauge this. So that was the Lodge, 19%. The Field ended up being left to right 17%, edge to edge at 39%. So that's on an induction. Again, like, is that sitting just right? Those sorts of things. That's a big variance. That ends up being 28%. That could be a user error. The Debye left to right is 27%, and handle to edge was 5% with a 16% combined total. So Lodge 19, Field 28, Dubois at 16. So then on the gas, we had, for the Lodge, left to right at 20%, top to bottom at 30% for an average of 25%. The Field, left to right was 29%, side to side was 30% for an average of 30% variance. The Dubois, left to right 25%, top to bottom 37% for a 31% difference. So it seems that gas is a little bit less efficient. It seems that induction is the average winner here. I'm surprised by the results for Field all over the place. There's a few things that I really want to dig into. Why is there that variance in Field? That'd be interesting to find out. And really that really hot spot, Dubois had that one side of the pan that no matter what I did on whatever heat source, it heated on one side of the pan more than the other. So some other things to dig into, but to answer the question for today, it seemed that induction, being that the energy leaves the coil and goes directly into the pan, so the pan is actually the heat source and it's not coming from a heat source, it heats the pan better. So induction, from my math here, seems to be the winner. I'd love to know what people think of the way in which I looked at this. I know there are some tools that we could do some more specific measuring. I'm looking into that to continue going down this pathway. And so that's where I'm at. So thanks so much. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.